My name is Lily Hawkins, and I was 31 the year my father died. By then, I had already learned how to live as a shadow in my own family. Not the black sheep, not even the disappointment, just the one no one ever seemed to see. I moved out at 19, worked 2 jobs through college, built a life without expecting anything from anyone. My family and I had this unspoken agreement: I don't ask, they don't offer. It kept the peace. It kept the distance. For years, it even kept me safe. And I convinced myself I didn't mind. Birthdays came and went. Holidays grew quieter. The miles between us felt easier than the ache of being unnoticed when I was right in front of them. My father was the exception. A quiet, private man who said little but meant everything he said. He wasn't cold, just efficient, composed, steady. When I was 13, he taught me how to balance a checkbook before he ever tried showing me how to throw a softball. He didn't believe in theatrics. He believed in follow-through. I respected him for that, and in his own reserved way, I think he respected me back. My older sister Denise was the opposite in every possible way. 4 years older, loud, radiant, dramatic. She walked into a room and absorbed all its oxygen. People adored her teachers, family, friends, our parents. She had this gravitational pull that made everyone orbit around her, wants her whims, her storms. She could crash a car and somehow end up getting a new one. I scraped my knee and got handed a first aid kit. That was our childhood in a single sentence. Denise married young to Trent, a man who worked in finance, at least according to him. His handshake was limp, his words were fluff, and he always felt like a salesman trying to convince the world he was more important than he was. But Denise had that gift she could polish anyone into, seeming like a prize. I was never close to either of them. They lived 15 minutes from my father's house while I was 3 states away in a quiet city where no one knew the Hawkins name. But I always stayed in touch with Dad, consistently quietly. A call every other Sunday, a birthday card, 2 visits a year, no pressure, no expectations. We understood each other in a way the rest of the family didn't. So when my phone buzzed during a rainy Tuesday morning meeting, Denise calling me of all people I already knew, something was wrong. The first time I let it ring. The second, too. The third time I stepped into the hallway and answered. Her voice was flat. Lily, he's gone. Dad passed in his sleep last night. Just like that. No softness, no breath between the words. A statement, a verdict. I leaned against the wall. The weight of it didn't hit all at once. It slid into me slowly, cold and dull. Dad had heart issues, but nothing that screamed urgency. Nothing that prepared me for this. Are you serious? I asked, not because I doubted her, but because my brain couldn't form anything else. He's gone, she repeated. The funeral's Friday. I already made the arrangements. That was it. No. Are you okay? No pause to let me breathe. Just logistics. I flew in the next day, landing after dusk. Denise didn't pick me up, not that I expected her to, but somehow it still stung. The funeral was exactly how Dad would have wanted: simple, direct, plain. No slideshow, no dramatic speeches, a modest wooden casket, a short eulogy, cheap coffee in paper cups. Denise, of course, wore a sleek black dress designed more for a gala than grief. Trent hovered beside her like a decorative accessory she forgot to leave at home. I stayed near the back. A few people nodded at me politely, unsure who I was. One of Dad's old coworkers placed a hand on my shoulder. He spoke highly of you, he said quietly. Said you were the only one who really listened. That hit harder than the funeral itself. Dad didn't offer praise casually. He never wasted words. If he said that, he meant it. After the reception, Denise didn't say much, just a curt nod, the kind you'd give an acquaintance. Then she drifted back into her circle of admirers, leaving me with the kind of silence you can feel in your ribs. 2 days later, I went to Dad's house. I needed to help sort things to clean, to be useful, to feel close to him, even in absence. But when I walked in, Denise was already sitting at the dining table with Trent and a man in a blazer. The kind of man who looked like he sold insurance policies he wouldn't remember the next day. Denise looked at me, and her expression chilled a few degrees. You didn't have to come, she said flatly. It's still Dad's house, I replied. I thought I could help. Trent chuckled under his breath. I ignored him. Denise gestured to the stranger. This is Richard, our family's estate attorney. Our family's. Since when? She didn't explain. Just gave me that familiar, condescending half smile she'd perfected over the years. The smile that said, you don't belong in the adult conversation. I held my tongue. Dad had just died. I tried to chalk her behavior up to grief, but the next days revealed the truth. It wasn't grief, it was entitlement. Denise moved through the house like she already owned it, claiming the furniture, the bank accounts, even Dad's old coin collection. Decisions were made without me. Conversations happened behind closed doors. She asserted control with the confidence of someone who believed everything naturally flowed into her hands. I stayed quiet, observed, took mental notes. The first real spark of anger hit when I found her rummaging through Dad's desk drawers, looking for something I asked. She didn't glance up. Important documents, Richard answered for her. We'll need the original deed for the house. I repeated. Denise snapped the drawer shut and finally looked at me. Don't make this difficult, Lily. I've handled everything. The funeral, the expenses, the logistics. The least you can do is stay out of the way. Her tone wasn't sharp, it was dismissive. Like I was a burden, an afterthought. I bit my tongue, again. But the next morning, she arrived with a manila folder and a smug smile. I was pouring coffee when she slid it onto the counter. I thought I'd tell you in person, she said. There's a will reading on Saturday, but you're not coming. My hand froze midair. Excuse me. She leaned in. It's better if you stay out of this. It's for family people who actually mattered to Dad. She let the implication hang there, heavy, cruel. I didn't argue, I didn't shout. I simply nodded, stepped outside, and called my lawyer. Because here's what Denise didn't know. Dad changed his will, and I inherited everything. And when she eventually found out, the screaming didn't stop for hours. Grief has a strange way of rearranging time. That week after Denise told me I wasn't coming to the will, reading the days stretched like elastic quiet on the surface but vibrating underneath. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't challenge her. I simply existed in my father's house, as if it still recognized me because it did. Every morning I brewed coffee in the same dented metal pot Dad refused to replace. I ate toast in the kitchen he renovated by hand. I moved through rooms still warm with his presence. And through it all, Denise pretended I wasn't there unless she needed a drawer opened or a paper signed. She didn't know I was waiting. She didn't know I was listening. She didn't know the lock in me had already clicked shut. While she rearranged my father's belongings like props for a stage she believed she owned, I spent my time sorting through the things that actually mattered, his books. Dad was a minimalist in nearly every way, but books were sacred to him. Hardcovers with sharp corners, yellowing paperbacks held together with tape, the classics annotated in his tight handwriting. I dusted them, boxed them, handling each like a part of him I could still touch. Denise never offered to help. She breezed in every morning like she was overseeing a renovation. She'd stand in the living room phone pressed to her ear, waving vaguely at family heirlooms. Do you need any of this old furniture? She asked one afternoon while scrolling through a catalog on her tablet. If not, I'll just call a junk service. I looked up from the stack of photo albums I was sorting. That coffee table is solid cherry, I said quietly. Dad built it when he was 20. She blinked. Really, huh? Well, it's not my style. And that was when I realized something important. Denise didn't know him. Not the man he really was. She knew his routines, his bank balance, the things she could extract from him. But she didn't know the Sunday rituals, the quiet porch mornings, the way he circled important passages in books like he was tucking little pieces of himself into them. She didn't know the version of him that existed with me. I let it slide, not because she deserved grace, but because Saturday was coming. The night before the will reading, I received a short, tight email from Richard, the estate attorney. The wording was polite, but the tone was drenched in passive aggression. Lily, as per your sister's request, the reading of Mr. Hawkins's will tomorrow will be a private event. We appreciate your discretion during this time. No address, no time, not even a courtesy call. I stared at the message for a full minute before forwarding it to my lawyer, Miles. I knew this would happen, proceed as planned. That night, I lay awake in the guest bedroom staring at the slow-turning ceiling fan. Memories rose and fell, like waves Christmas mornings where Denise opened 5 gifts while I unwrapped a scarf. Birthdays she forgot. School awards no one came to see. The sharp realization that being invisible for so long had changed me in ways I didn't notice until now. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. You swallow it. You grow around it like scar tissue. But eventually you realize there's a difference between being independent and being erased. By sunrise, I wasn't angry anymore, just clear. At exactly 10 o'clock, Miles arrived at the house. Always impeccably dressed, crisp suit, polished shoes, he looked like a man born inside a briefcase. You're sure you want to do it this way? He asked, as I handed him the spare key. She wanted to play games, I said. Let's show her what it looks like when she loses. He nodded once. We drove in silence to Denise's gated community, a row of houses that looked cloned from a blueprint labeled expensive but soulless. Her front door was open. Music murmured from inside. Voices laughing, chatting like this was a cocktail hour instead of a will reading. When I stepped inside, Richard stood near the foyer, checking his watch like he hoped to escape early. Denise saw me first. Her smile evaporated. "What are you doing here?" she snapped, stomping toward me in heels, sharp enough to pierce concrete. "I was invited," I said calmly. Behind me, Miles stepped forward, handing her a crisp white card. "Good morning. I'm Miles Carter, legal representative for Ms. Hawkins. We're here for the reading." Denise didn't take the card. "This is family only," she hissed. "You can't just show up." Miles was unfazed. "According to the most recent and legally binding version of your father's will, Ms. Lily Hawkins is the primary beneficiary and executor. She is entitled to be present for all proceedings." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Trent appeared behind her, already sweating. "Is this a joke?" "No," I said, stepping past him into the living room, "but it's about to get very serious." The guests fell silent as we entered. Richard looked confused, but attempted professionalism. I wasn't aware there was another version of the will. Miles opened his portfolio with the confidence of a man holding a royal flush. "Notarized, witnessed, filed 3 months ago. Would you like a copy?" Denise spun toward me, face paling. "What is this? Some last-minute trick," he would have told me. I met her eyes steady in a way I hadn't been since childhood. "He did tell me. A quiet truth. 2 months ago. You said you were too busy to join us." Her face flickered confusion, disbelief, then dawning horror. Dad's last words to me echoed in my mind. "You don't have to fight her, Lily. Just stand still long enough and she'll trip over her own ego." And she did. The will was read out loud. Clause after clause. Asset after asset. Dad left everything to me. The savings, the house, the investments, the watch he wore every day, all of it. For Denise, one handwritten line, "I leave her the lessons she refused to learn." When Richard finished, the room held its breath. Denise stepped forward like something had possessed her. "You manipulated him," she spat. "You always twist things. You disappeared for years, waiting to swoop in." "I didn't disappear," I said. "I stepped back when I realized I was only invited when you needed someone to applaud you." She trembled with rage. "This was supposed to be my house. I took care of him." "No," I interrupted softly. "You dropped in when it gave you an audience." She snapped. Her voice rose sharp enough to cut glass. "He wasn't even your real father." The room went silent. My lungs froze. Denise kept going louder, uglier. "You all knew that, right? Lily wasn't even related to him. Dad adopted her when she was 5. She wasn't a Hawkins. She was a charity project." Charity. That word hit like a fist. Something inside me cracked, not loudly but deeply. A private shattering. I don't remember leaving the room. One moment I was surrounded by faces staring at me like I was a stranger, and the next, I was outside walking with no destination, just distance. I walked past manicured lawns, past the park, where I once played, past everything that used to mean home. Everything Denise tried to destroy hit me at once. I wasn't just the invisible daughter. According to her, I wasn't even a daughter at all. I don't know how long I walked that day. Time stretched thin the way it does when something inside you cracks so loudly, the world goes quiet around it. I wandered past manicured lawns cafes. I used to visit the old park, where I had a blurry memory of a swing set and a man my father pushing me gently while telling me not to fear the wind. But suddenly even memories felt borrowed. "You weren't even his real daughter, a charity project." Those words dug into me like hooks. I kept hearing them, long after Denise had stopped speaking, as though the echo had lodged itself inside my ribs. By late afternoon, I found myself staring at a vending machine outside a rundown motel. I checked in without thinking, paid in cash, and shut my phone off before it even finished buzzing with new notifications. I didn't want to talk to anyone, not Miles, not my boyfriend Asher, who had texted me earlier, asking if I landed safely. Not even the couple arguing next door whose raised voices bled through the thin walls. For 4 days, I lived in silence. I ate stale snacks from the vending machine, watched reruns of sitcoms that made laughter sound like static, and lay awake at night, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering if my entire life had been a patchwork held together by a lie. I didn't open the folder Miles had handed me after the will reading. It sat on the bedside table, untouched, like a wound I wasn't ready to look at. Every time I glanced at it, Denise's voice slithered back. Dad adopted her. She wasn't even a Hawkins. And beneath that accusation lurked a quieter fear. If I wasn't his real daughter, why did he choose me? Did he choose me at all? On the 4th morning, something shifted. It wasn't clarity or strength, not yet. It was anger. Not at my father, not even at Denise. Anger at myself for letting her words take root. My father never treated me like an accessory or an obligation. He never made me feel lesser, not once. He was quiet, yes, but his presence had always been a steady kind of love, the kind that didn't need to be announced to exist. I packed my bag, turned my phone on, and drove straight back to his house. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt different, heavy, and familiar. His jacket still hung over the back of the armchair. His book sat on the side table, bookmark tucked between the pages. Nothing about this house questioned who I was. For a long moment, I stood in the living room and just breathed. Then I picked up the folder. I sat on the couch, he always claimed, folded my knees beneath me, and finally opened it. Inside was the will, which I already knew. Financial documents, estate details, and then a sealed envelope with my name written in his handwriting. My throat tightened. I inhaled and opened it. The paper inside was yellowed, slightly dated 2 years ago. His handwriting was neat, deliberate, with little indentations, where he pressed down too hard on certain letters. Lily, if you're reading this, I am gone. I won't pretend to have been the easiest man to understand, but I need you to know something without a flicker of doubt. You are my daughter, not by accident, not by obligation, by choice. My breath caught. I chose you the moment I met you. You were 5, terrified, clinging to a blanket with holes in it. Your mother didn't want to keep you, and the system didn't know what to do with you. But I saw you, and I knew. In that instant, I knew I was supposed to be your father. Tears blurred the ink on the page. I never told you because I didn't want it to feel like a qualifier. You were never my adopted daughter. You were simply my daughter, my Lily. I covered my mouth with my hand, choking back a sob. If Denise ever made you feel less than that, is my failure not yours? I couldn't teach her what I gave you: naturally quiet strength, integrity, the ability to show up. You never asked for anything, and yet you gave me more than I ever deserved. My vision blurred again, but I kept reading. This house, my savings, the things I built, they're not compensation. They're a thank you for being my greatest decision, for being exactly who you are. Remember, blood never made a family. Love did, and you were the love of mine. Dad, I didn't just cry, I unraveled. All the tears I never let myself show, all the grief I'd tucked into the corners of my ribs, all the fear Denise had hurled at me, they came pouring out. Not quietly, not gracefully. I sobbed into the pages like a child's shoulders shaking, breath hitching. And when it finally, slowly, gently stopped, I felt something I hadn't felt since the funeral. Stillness, a new kind of clarity. I wiped my face, folded the letter back into the envelope, and held it to my chest. He chose me. He chose me. The house around me didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like an inheritance of identity, something sacred. That night I started rebuilding. Not the estate, not the financial logistics. Me. The next morning I opened the garage and began sorting through the dusty boxes my father left behind. Tools, paint-stained rags, old logs detailing every repair he'd ever done. I scanned the notes labeled each, with dates organized the garage the way he used to. It was meditative, healing. Then I tackled the basement. Denise had never stepped foot down there unless there was wine involved. I found old tax returns from 1996, letters, cassette tapes labeled, Lily's first day of school, Lily learns to ride a bike. Lake trip, 2001. I didn't even own a cassette player, but I ordered one online that afternoon. Every discovery felt like a hand reaching back through time, reminding me, you were always his. He never doubted it. Meanwhile, Denise sent emails. Casual at first. Hey, just checking on the disbursement schedule. Then colder. The car in the garage technically belonged to Dad and me. I'll pick it up Friday. Then petty, you have no right to throw away my childhood things. I'm still grieving. I didn't respond. When she showed up at the front door and threatened court action, I watched through the security camera as she stood there in sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly rent, waiting for someone to break. No one did. Every day I grew steadier, stronger, more like the version of myself he saw. And in that growing strength came a new realization. Denise wasn't done. She would come for what she believed she was entitled to, but she had no idea who I was becoming. Healing is a slow, deliberate thing. Revenge, real revenge, the kind that doesn't scorch your soul, moves even slower. Over the next weeks, Denise's emails shifted from cold to panicked to manipulative. She tried every angle: pity, guilt, threats, faux civility. Lily, let's talk about dividing the house fairly. It's only right I receive something. It's not good for the family to drag this out. Family. She loved that word when it benefited her. I ignored every message. It wasn't avoidance, it was preparation. Because while Denise was spiraling, I was doing the opposite. I met with Miles once a week, combing through every account, every clause in the will, every line item my father had touched. His estate was more complex than I'd realized. Quiet investments, real estate trusts, even a silent partnership in a local bookstore. But what struck me wasn't the money. It was how intentional he'd been, how deliberately he'd arranged everything with me in mind. For the first time in my life, I felt what Denise had always taken for granted being chosen. A month after the will reading, Denise escalated. A letter from her attorney arrived, a formal contestation of the will, claims of undue influence, lack of mental capacity, hints of fraud. Miles read through the document, his mouth tightening. As expected, he said, sliding it across the table. She has no case. The updated will is airtight. I know, I said, but she's not trying to win. She's trying to exhaust you, he finished. We understood each other. Denise's strategy was noise. Mine would be precision. And the first step was remembering something she'd once carelessly bragged about. 3 years ago, I'd returned home for Christmas. Dad made coffee. Denise scrolled through her phone, barely acknowledging us. She'd said offhandedly, Trent and I started a business, something for influencers and branding. We filed the LLC online. Took 5 minutes. 5 minutes, no accountant, no legal counsel, no oversight. That memory resurfaced now like a breadcrumb. So I went digging. Turns out Denise and Trent's Business Ridgeview Collective LLC was a disaster disguised as ambition. Miles and I followed the paper trail. The LLC was registered to a mail forwarding service, not a real address. They'd listed Dad's old P.O. box as their business location. The company had unpaid taxes for 2 consecutive years. They'd failed to report structural changes. One unhappy client filed a complaint that Trent promised a $20,000 brand partnership that never existed. It got worse. Dad had given them a $50,000 loan. No repayment plan. No documentation beyond a tiny notation in his ledger. More recently, 8 months before his death, there was a $10,000 transfer labeled family emergency. I knew exactly what kind of emergency that was. Is this enough to start legal action, I asked. Not yet, Miles said, but it's leverage. And leverage is sometimes worth more. But leverage became power when paired with something else. While cleaning Dad's study weeks earlier, I had found a locked cabinet. I'd assumed it held tools or old paperwork. I ignored it. Until now. I checked under the drawers. Behind them. Dad was discreet but sentimental. I found the key taped beneath the center drawer. Inside the cabinet were notebooks, stacked carefully, one for each year. Personal journals, financial notes, health updates, private thoughts about me and Denise. One entry stopped me cold. Denise asked for more money today, said it was for marketing materials. I don't believe her. Said no. She stormed out. I hate that this keeps happening. Another. Trent pushed again about being included in the will. Told him it wasn't his place. Lily would never ask for such a thing. She just shows up when it matters. Reading his words felt like stepping into his mind, his doubts, his clarity, his quiet pride in me. Miles flipped through the pages slowly. She's walking into a minefield, he said. Exactly. But revenge wasn't the goal, not anymore. Legacy was. That night I sat at Dad's desk and began planning something I hadn't expected a foundation. Not a memorial, a continuation. I called Mark, a friend from college, a software developer I'd once helped with a pitch deck. He owed me a favor. When I explained what I wanted, he didn't hesitate. I can build the site in a week, he said. What's the mission? I stared at Dad's letter on the desk. To help kids who age out of foster care. Silence. Then Mark exhaled softly. That's beautiful, Lily. Let's do it. I named it the Hawkins Foundation because despite everything Denise said, that name belonged to me more than it ever had to her. Mark built a clean, simple website with a donation page, program outlines, and a mission statement pulled from my father's words. You were 5, terrified, clinging to a blanket with holes in it. That moment built my purpose. Now let it build someone else's. Underneath it, a photo Mark insisted I include. Dad, arms crossed, smiling faintly in front of the house he bought for us. The caption read, "This home built more than walls. It built a second chance. Now we give that chance forward." I shared the foundation quietly with Dad's old coworkers, the local librarian who always chatted with him, a few community members. It spread faster than I imagined. Within 2 weeks, we had nearly $30,000 in donations. By the end of the month, $50,000. Enough to start looking for a building to convert into transitional housing. Every step felt like oxygen returning to my lungs. Every donation felt like someone telling me, he chose right. You're continuing what he started. That was when Richard, the estate attorney who had stood beside Denise at the will reading, emailed me. He asked to meet. We sat at a cafe downtown. He looked tired, like a man who finally realized he'd backed the wrong person. I visited the foundation website, he said. Your father would have been proud. I handled his paperwork for 12 years, and I'm ashamed to say I underestimated you. I nodded once. Off the record, he continued, leaning in. Denise is panicking. She expected you to sell the assets and disappear. She never imagined you'd transform them into something permanent. Permanent. Yes, that's what I wanted. And there's something else, he added quietly. 6 months before your father passed, Denise asked me to draft a revision to the will. She wanted everything split 50-50. He refused. Firmly. 6 months. Right before she claimed she needed that marketing loan. Right before she tried pressuring him. The picture grew clearer, darker, sharper. But the final piece wouldn't fall into place until 2 days later, when Miles forwarded me surveillance footage retrieved from a backup drive. The video was grainy, but unmistakable. Denise and Trent standing in Dad's kitchen whispering while he sat in the living room. Trent, just bring up the will. You keep dancing around it. Denise, he's not ready. Trent. And if Lily finds out Denise, she's a ghost. She won't know anything until it's too late. I sat back in my chair, pulse steady. Not angry, not hurt. Clear. I called Miles. It's time, I said. For what he asked? For the final act. There's a silence that comes right before a storm. Not empty charged. Not calm, precise. That's what the weeks felt like after Miles and I gathered every piece of evidence, every careless mistake Denise had made, every breadcrumb she left in her trail of entitlement. She thought the will contestation would rattle me. Instead, it clarified everything. When the court dismissed her case swiftly, almost bluntly, Miles called it laughably weak. Denise filed motion after motion, all of which only increased her legal fees, not mine. The moment judgment became final, I didn't celebrate. I didn't send a triumphant message. I didn't even tell Asher right away. I simply requested a reservation at an upscale cafe halfway between my side of town and Denise's. A neutral battleground. With elegant lighting, soft music, and no escape routes, exactly the kind of place where pretending mattered to her. Then I emailed her one line, "Let's meet, one last time." She replied within minutes. Denise arrived wearing a designer coat, oversized sunglasses, and heels sharp enough to break tile. She walked in like paparazzi could appear at any moment, the picture of someone who believed maintaining an image meant maintaining power. "Nice of you to come to your senses," she said as she sat across from me, legs crossed tightly. "I assume you realized dragging this out wasn't worth it." I smiled, small, polite, surgical. "Actually, I realized something else," I said. "It's worth finishing properly." I placed the first folder on the table. A settlement agreement. Not generous, not cruel. Strategic. Inside, it offered her a courtesy disbursement of $150,000, not inheritance, not recognition. A gesture. A polite acknowledgement of emotional labor she claimed she provided. Denise flipped through the pages and smirked. "I knew you would come around. Honestly, Lily, this is the least you could do." "You're right," I said, softly folding my hands. "It is the least I could do." She didn't hear the meaning beneath those words. Of course she didn't. She'd spent her whole life mistaking noise for victory. "But there's a catch," I added. Her smile faltered. "You have to sign it today. Right now. No edits. No negotiations. Once you sign, you waive all claims to the estate, past, present, future." She laughed, a brittle sound. "Please, you think I care about that ridiculous business Ridgeview Collective is nothing." "Oh, I know," I said, reaching into my bag. "It really is nothing." I placed the second folder on the table. This one was much thicker. Denise's smirk died instantly. "Funny you say that," I continued, sliding the folder toward her, "because your business just became very real to the IRS." She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were unpaid tax reports, violations from the State Business Bureau, emails showing misrepresentation to a client, the $50,000 loan from Dad, the $10,000 family emergency transfer, evidence that business funds were used for personal luxury purchases, the BMW lease in Trent's name, every financial breadcrumb she hoped no one would ever follow. Her face drained of color. "I'm guessing you didn't report any of these as income," I said, "which makes them taxable. Emotionally inconvenient, and criminal." She snapped the folder shut. "You wouldn't dare." I leaned back. "I don't have to. Everything in that folder is already with the auditor I hired. One email from me, and he'll forward it to the IRS. Her jaw clenched. "You set me up." "No," I said calmly. "You set yourself up. I just paid attention." She looked at the settlement offer again, hands shaking. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, as though realizing for the first time that I wasn't the invisible sister she used to step over. "You want to destroy me over money," she whispered. I shook my head. "This isn't about money, Denise. You already lost that the moment Dad signed his will." "Then what?" "It's about the lie you told. The one that gutted me. The one meant to erase me." Her lips parted, guilt flickering for one rare, fragile second. Then she hardened again. "He wasn't your real father," she insisted, voice cracking like glass. "He wasn't. You were—" "He was the only real parent either of us ever had," I said softly. "And unlike you, I never took him for granted. He chose me. And I am done letting you rewrite that." Our waitress approached with a poured latte, smiling completely unaware of the emotional minefield she'd wandered into. I thanked her politely, waited for her to leave, then gathered the folders. "This offer expires in 24 hours, I said. "After that, I'll let the IRS handle everything." Denise didn't speak. She didn't threaten, didn't bargain, didn't cry. She just sat there, small and silent, for the first time in her life, realizing she had lost not to me, but to her own arrogance. I placed the courtesy settlement back in front of her, and left without looking back. That night, at 11:47 p.m., I received an email from her private account. No greeting, no apology. Just 2 words. I signed. The attached PDF was stamped initialed final. I forwarded it to Miles, closed my laptop, and sat on the porch with a glass of wine. The night was warm, quiet, still. And for the first time since Dad died, the silence didn't hurt. It healed. 2 weeks later, the Hawkins Foundation held its first public fundraiser. We had raised enough to begin searching for a transitional housing property. Members of the community came. Dad's old coworkers came. Even Richard attended, quietly placing a donation envelope in the box. Asher stood beside me, his hand warm around mine. He didn't say much. He never needed to, but he squeezed my fingers when the crowd applauded, and that was enough. On the Foundation's website, under a section titled Our Story, I added a photograph. Dad kneeling beside 6-year-old me in our backyard, one hand on my shoulder, both of us squinting into the sun. The caption read, "He gave me a home, so I built one for others." Denise never responded to the link I sent her. I didn't expect her to. Her silence wasn't an absence. It was the consequence of her own choices. And I no longer carried any part of her inside me. The house stayed mine. The business I built from Dad's handwritten notes flourished quietly exactly the way he would have wanted. The foundation grew into something meaningful. And every Sunday morning, I kept his ritual, 1 cup of tea, 20 minutes on the porch, 2 chapters of whatever book he left on the nightstand. His lessons lived on inside me. His love lived on around me. And his words, "You were my greatest decision," became something I could finally believe without flinching. Because I wasn't the invisible daughter, I wasn't the outsider, I wasn't the charity case. I was the daughter he chose, the daughter he trusted, the daughter who carried his legacy forward. And that quietly, powerfully was the victory.